It's a choice. It's not, well, you can let anger and resentment from what happened when we were dating, you can allow that to be into the present. Or you make a cognitive choice to be like, I choose to be a healthy co-parent for our son.
Ladies and gentlemen,
you are now about to witness
the journey that is the Lyfe Choyces podcast.
Yeah!
I told you I kind of want to talk about fatherhood for a few reasons. I've been missing the fuck out of my dad lately. And right now, at this particular moment, a few days ago, was the 8th anniversary of his passing. And so I've been watching a TV show lately that kind of has me set in my head lately and like wishing, wanting, all these kind of things, coulda, woulda, shoulda, type deal. And for two men of our age who had two different backgrounds and most likely two different relationships with our fathers, I kind of wanted to get into that because I know that in the beginning, you and your father didn't have the best of relationships, but now you guys own companies together.
Correct. And
now here you are, a brand new father.
Yeah. Well, I feel like you have the power to be different than how you were raised. The good, the bad. And right now it's a blank slate. It's a clean slate. And I have the opportunity to dress up and show up for him in ways that I thought or felt that I needed my dad to be. At certain times in my life where he wasn't there because of his own issues, I have the luxury or choice to be his constant forever. And that's something that I didn't have. He's my dad now is my constant, but it took 20 years for him to be my constant. And I get to create his first 20 years and hopefully more than that to be his constant.
Right. And I have to imagine what you're saying is what I hope to bring into my future. The conversations I get to have with my guests about fatherhood is really just kind of like, instead of going and buying the book, I'm trying to learn from what they have gone through or what they are going through. Because in my opinion, besides the experiences that one has with their own father, which I agree with you 100%, all of the good and all of the bad that our fathers did for us, to us, with us, whatever the situation is, we are able to realize at a young age how we don't want to or how we do want to be with our children, right? And in hopes that we do a little bit better or a little bit more than our parent did for us. So yes, doing that little bit different than we had, that our parents did for us, that responsibility, like I see what you're saying. It's like a great power. It's a great enjoyment that you now get to mold the next however many years that you're granted to have this child live with you. And you get to put forth all the bests of yourself, but you also get to lean on the negatives that you yourself went through and the stuff that you experienced with your parent or parents to navigate your own way of being a parent.
Correct.
How old was your dad when he had you?
22.
Right. And this was also 30 some odd years ago.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like there's so many different aspects that are going on right now. What is one of the biggest, what's the most important thing for you right now as a new parent for the child?
What I don't ever want to forget is how important just being present is. And not letting like outside influence just the day-to-day life, work, this, that, like take me away from like being present. Like being so busy that I can't like go play catch with my son.
Right, which could possibly become a situation because you own and run around something like 5 or so businesses.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of them, I'm just like a silent investor. So a lot of them they're not self-ran, but I'm not really involved with them to the day to day. And like I've done a lot of work to be able to get to this point where I don't work weekends. Like I'm very I try to create as much balance as I can. And like, I don't ever foresee me taking a job that would like miss his soccer game or something. Like, it's just not.
I hear you. I want to be there for all of those kind of events because I remember as the youngest of three boys where, my father at the beginning stages of his law practice, he was like the coach of my oldest brother's hockey team. My dad and my mom, very, very present with my middle brother's baseball tournaments that we went on. Cause I remember doing all these things. As life goes on and businesses get busier and responsibilities happen as children, we don't always understand what the parent is going through.
Correct.
And we interpret it in the way in which, through the eyes of a child. So as life becomes heavier, more responsibilities happen, and you just don't know where path will go when it comes to work. And yes, I'd love to be for every school event, every sporting event, but these things might not happen.
They may not. I mean, luckily I'm fine. I'm in a place financially where I don't foresee that happening, and nor do I want it to be. I don't ever want to be so busy that like I forget to live a life beyond my kid. Like, I've been doing this before I even had a child. Like, I always want to take time for me and travel the world and like see different cultures. Like, that's always been more important to me than just trying to make money. Like, money can only do so much. Mm-hmm. And like, I learned really on that I had to learn to become happy with myself with nothing. And luckily that's how my journey was. Like, I had nothing. So it was either learn to get happy or just stay miserable. So I got happy with nothing. And then as a byproduct of happiness, peace, serenity, spirituality, just came success. So if you took all of this shit away from me, I'm okay.
You're still good.
I'm still here. And like, I don't ever want to, I would never build a brand or a business where my time is allocated 60 hours a week. I don't want to do it. It's not worth it to me. I don't need to be the big shot enough where my time is just trying to make money.
The home life is more important to you.
Yeah, I mean, me and the mom are not together.
Okay.
So it's difficult, and I have them 50-50.
That's good.
Yeah, it is good. And I've learned very quickly that it's just not supposed to be that way.
How so?
Bro, a dad is not supposed to be alone with a kid for 4 days at a time.
No?
What I mean by that, a woman, a mother is different. Like, it's their natural thing. Luckily for me, I'm very like lovey-dovey, so it's not like it's no stress off my back. But beyond any of that, like the experience, I don't wish it upon nobody.
Okay, let's get into that. I was fortunate enough, and I thank my lucky stars every day that I grew up in a household that that had both parents, but two incomes, suburban household. Like, I didn't really go without many things. My father worked, give or take, 6 or 7 days a week, but at a young age, I understood why he was doing that, because we had what we had, and we wouldn't have had that if he wasn't grinding every day. And my mom worked too, Monday to Friday. She was a school teacher. But at the end of the day, I had the love of two parents all the time. So not having one of them around all the time, even though at the time I didn't appreciate it, because as a young kid, I kind of pushed them away. And that's what I'm saying by like the show I've been watching lately. I've had a lot of wish I could have, would have, because when they were around, my mom still is, when my dad was around, like there was a lot of kind of push away from him. But fortunate enough that I had both of them in the household. So you're now living the life of having 50-50. You grew up with your mom more than your dad around, correct?
Correct.
So you lived that life. So you understand what that's going to be like, the difficulties, the disadvantages, and the advantages, because not having that father figure around, an advantage, I would assume, is you kind of get away with doing a bit more things because you're the man in the house at a young age. So now you have all of that in your head, and you have this young boy 50% of the time. So that's clearly adding to the thought process of how you're going to bring him up with inside your house.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, I meet somebody, we become a family, and it becomes a normal thing, mom, dad. And I feel like it has a lot to do with me and his mother. Like, we have choices. Like, I'm big on, like, I'm working on it with therapy of, like, finding gray areas in life because I'm very black and white. But things that I'm, like, you know, very strong, opinionated on, it's black and white for me. Why? Me and his mother have a choice right now, today, to be different than how we were both raised. It's a choice. It's not, well, you can let anger and resentment from what happened when we were dating, you can allow that to be into the present, or you make a cognitive choice to be like, I choose to be a healthy co-parent for our son. It's a choice to me, but it's not
always like that.
Not always like that. And it's frustrating because lack of power. There's nothing I can do about it.
Well, there's nothing you can do the 50% of the time that the child's not with you.
Yeah, but I'm referencing definitely that, which I haven't really had to experience that aspect of it. But I'm talking about like family events and out like in the future or even now, like there's family events where one of us are not there because we have our own, you know, tension, we'll call it. And it's like, for what? Like, I don't want to, I always think about this picture I've seen on social media. It's a mom, stepdad, kid, dad, stepmom. And they're co-parenting and raising two separate families, but they get along. They're friendly. Like, I am willing to make that choice to be that for my kid.
You're willing to be a man.
Yeah.
In a situation where one may have to swallow his own pride.
Yeah.
Put his own feelings aside for the betterment of the child so that you can be at all events regardless.
100%.
And unfortunately, we see it a lot in like movies and television where, you know, one parent or both parents play the children off each other and try to ruin the other parent or their time with the kid because of selfishness. And that is just, like, come on, 2024. Like, you have to be a grown up and be like, listen, if you and I didn't work out, okay, so what? This child has a chance, an opportunity to become the best whatever in the world. Correct. But will have hard times doing it if he grows up in an environment where the two people that are supposed to be the pillars of strength are at each other's throats all the time.
Yeah, I don't want it to be like that. It don't have to be like that, but we're getting through it, I guess. It could be better in my opinion, but it's a process.
Right. And no one has a handbook on successful parenting.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we learn from our parents. They did the best they could with what they knew. And hopefully we turned out okay over a period of time. The environment that you grew up in, obviously in the back of your head, has to be there when with child.
I mean, it's such a night and day difference.
Yeah.
Like my household, you walk into my house, you just feel peaceful. It's like here. It just has this aura of serenity and peace. It's clean and there's no screaming. There's no yelling. There's no cops. There's no chaos. That's all I knew growing up. Yeah. Sometimes good, sometimes not so good, but he's in a nice house and it's just all love.
Those of us that have been on the show that are relatively in the same generation as I am, our parents' way of parenting was a lot different because of the way they were brought up. Mm-hmm. And whether it was cops or yelling, there seemed to be a level of communication that wasn't calm. You know, like, I don't know how not to be calm. I used to yell in my 20s with like the girlfriends I dated. I'd fly off the deep end, and I always figured, like, not that I saw my parents fight, but I saw and heard the way they communicated, which I always thought they were yelling at each other. But when I asked my mom about it one day, she said, no, we just communicate that way. Like, one raises their voice, then the other raises their voice, and it just the volume just went up. But they weren't like it wasn't negative, but as a child looking at it, all I saw was loud screaming. So I assumed negative from it. Where myself, so I can take like my two brothers, I see things from outside of the box basically. So I'm not married, I don't have kids, and I go home and I visit and I watch like the family units and then how the households are run and whatnot. And I noticed that both of my brothers are quieter in the household, where it was the opposite in the house we grew up in. And I don't know if that's because our father yelled a lot in communicating so that they've become more docile, or more likely than not, it's just that they realize no point in getting angry about something when you can just calmly, okay, sure, no problem. Yeah, okay, sounds good. Now I don't know, because again, I'm interpreting something that I see once in a blue moon, because I only see my family once or twice a year for the past 16, 17 years. I don't know, like we become our parent, but we also want to not become our parent.
I definitely want to, I mean, there's good and bad. You want to have some characteristics of your mom and your dad, and there's some that you're like, I just refuse to parent this way. And that's where it becomes a choice. There's no rule book in any of it, but trial and error. And I think that this generation is it's a little bit more easier to like say sorry.
To who?
Your children.
Okay.
Let me rephrase that. I feel like it would be easier for me to get on their level. Like no one ever got on my level, which is why I was so misunderstood, is that there was no, hey, this has nothing to do with you. Me and your dad are fighting. There's like, hey, sorry that you seen me and mom act like that. Or, hey, this is what this meant. But as a kid, and there's no one communicating to you, what do? You create stories. And then for me, I took it as it was all because of me. And if I wasn't here, then they wouldn't be doing that. Especially if it was an argument that revolved around me. Oh, I'm just like, all of the character defects that I already thought that I had were just compounded. And
it's so interesting that you bring this up, because I don't know if you've ever seen the show. It's called This Is Us. If you haven't, I honestly think it's worth a watch. I don't know if it's my upbringing, but it's set in a time in which everything reminds me of my youth. It's set in the 70s and 80s, vintage looking. It's everything from back then. The houses, the clothing, the way the parents wear, the hairstyles, everything. So I have a lot of nostalgic towards it. And I notice that the children in the show, that in some episodes you see them as adults, which would be us right now, the way they are parenting is when the parents, like you're saying, had an argument about something, or if one parent had acted in a way out loud that was maybe not the best, you would then see the next scene where they are apologizing to the child and say, listen, dad's just having a rough week. None of this has to do with anything you guys have done. I'm dealing with some shit. And that's the energy that you're seeing right now, and I apologize for that. Which is so interesting that you describe it that way, because I don't disagree with that way, because why not show the humanality of yourself to your children? I think it'll help them grow up. The thing that I don't agree with, and it's my personal opinion, is the parenting style of the timeout. Now, I know you're not there yet because you have a brand new infant, but I was brought up in a household where hitting was okay. And I still think it to a certain level, like a good smack, I think is needed. Mm-hmm. I learned a lot of things that way. I learned how to do a lot of things once because of that. Yeah. But I've also grown up in a way where I respect people. I respect my elders, like Mr. So-and-so, Mrs. So-and-so. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Like all that was very much instilled in me in the way in which my parents parented. Now, not just my father in the late 70s and through the 80s and early 90s was the heavy hand. Like even though, yes, my mom did the cooking and made sure the house ran and all that sort of stuff, my mom also raised a hand if she needed to. It wasn't a big deal. We didn't grow up in this, tell me how you're feeling today, Bobby.
Yeah, I feel like that's not. I agree with it. That's how I think I would be.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not gonna. I don't have that in me, and I don't want to raise. I mean, I don't know. I feel like I've dated women that had children, but that's a whole different conversation because you are just. What do you do?
Mm-hmm.
You're not the dad.
No.
But with my kid, I don't know how I would be. I don't think I would. I don't think that the soft super that approach is beneficial. I think that it's trauma based from the parents, from how they were raised. It's a trauma response to be different. If I can create a space with my son to allow him to communicate to me, that in itself is super, super powerful. Because there was never a place for me to tell anybody anything. It didn't fucking matter.
If we were ever given the opportunity to add something, we were never taken seriously. Nothing we ever said was ever listened to because we were just a child.
Yeah.
You know that, and I get that. That's literally how I felt growing up. No, I'm just a kid. But if that space was created, which I understand what you're saying, I also would love to have the environment where any male or female children that I may have feel comfortable coming to me to have a conversation about life. Definitely want to have that ability because I don't want them to have to go out of the house to ask or find out things. I'd love to be the one that gives them the help and gives them the education. I've had this conversation, the way in which I know I'm going to parent because of the way I was parented. So some of the aspects of my father that are not the best, I'm still going to be part of those because I respect how he parented me because of the way I turned out.
And I get that. It was hard for me to like respect my dad in a way when he did it because he wasn't a constant. It's like, how are you to come here after being away for 6 months and try to be a dad? Like, but I feel like if it was a constant, like I remember when I was much younger and he was a constant, we'll call it, that was just dad. Like, but then it's like as you get older and the abandonment comes, it's like, yo, fuck you, dude. I'm not listening to you.
And then that's where the rebellious comes in, and that's where
exactly.
But then when he was around, you probably got hit occasionally.
Oh yeah.
You know, and then you were like, oh fuck, maybe I should respect him. So it's a fine line. It's a tough thing, especially from like the generation they came from, the way we were brought up, and that's why I have these very open conversations. I'm very old school in the way in which I've sought after a companion. I saw the way my parents were. My mom has expressed to me that she was the wife to my father because she chose to be that type of wife. And like I said, she worked her whole life, but she still took care of my dad. She took care of the house. Everything was done the way he wanted it. And, you know, everyone always told me growing up, oh, you know, that's that generation. You're not going to find that. And I've been very fortunate because I have found a woman that is just like that, and we've had conversations, and she agrees with my way of parenting because her parents in her country parented her the same way. And I'm fortunate because, and again, we won't know until it unfolds, until we have kids and we see what happens, but I'm going to be firm with them, but I'm also going to open up the conversation so that they feel comfortable enough that when life comes at them, they can talk to me. Because I think that's the biggest thing for me is, even at this point in my life at 46, no matter how great I get at living, no matter how successful I get at my practices and how many days of happiness I have, life is a constant force of shit with amazing, surprising moments of happiness. And the more I live, the more I realize no matter how hard I practice, no matter how great I become successful at living mentally and physically healthy, there's always going to be life. Life is always going to happen, and it's not always going to happen the way you want it. It's not always going to happen at the time in which you want it, and you have to know how to handle that. And fuck me, it's difficult.
It is.
So dealing with that, and then having a child in front of you, knowing this information, right? Like, you know, you've lived the life. We talked about this on the last episode. You have such a story, but now you have a child that based on your actions for the next 18 to 20 years, there's a possibility of it going either way. So how do you handle that?
I mean, you don't have you can harp on it and try to, you have no control right now. You just, it's a day by day process. And that's where it falls back. And if I feel like I've done something that will hinder my son as far as the way that I'm parenting, I need to have enough, one, I need to recognize it. And two, I need to put my tail between my legs and just have a conversation with him, because what I don't want to do is create a fear-based relationship. And it's easier for our generation. Like, I feel like my dad instilled fear to be a certain way, but all that fear did was push us away. And I feel like there's a way to be firm, but also understanding. And I just feel like my brain works a lot different than most people's, and I feel like it's just going to be this natural, because of the trauma that I went through. Like, I know, like, I feel like I'll be able to put myself into my son's shoes a lot quicker, so that my response will inevitably be different.
It'll help him instead of harm him in a way of him worrying about what he should or should not say.
Yeah, because fear only creates fear. It doesn't... Nothing good comes from it.
All three of my brothers we've admitted to each other or to other people that we feared our father. You know, we did. Like, that was, there was no question about it. Like, if I did something wrong, I was afraid to go home. Mm. Like, I knew that, like, hey, I knew by now he knew, right? Whatever happened, whether it was at school, the playground, whatever, they just find out real quick. Yeah. And the moment you get home, you're like, we were definitely afraid. Like, I was afraid of my father for most of my life. And that environment of safety, of being able to speak wasn't there. You know, I got pushed to the limit. I think I was probably around 17, where I just blew up one day. And it was just me, my dad, and my mom in the house. I don't think my brothers were home at that time. And I might have even been a year or two younger than that, maybe 16 or something like that. And I blew up. I just lost my shit because of the way it was always coming at me. I was just like, and I don't want that to happen. Finding that fine line, and this is where I'm going to lean on my friends such as you and other men that have had kids. And by the time I have mine, their kids will already be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. Is finding that fine line, because, like I said, I want to parent in some ways just like my father, because, again, he brought up 3 wonderful boys who have created amazing lives, each individually for themselves. But we all feared my dad.
Yeah, and I don't want to do that. I think there's a way to be firm and not instill fear in my son. I know that it's possible. I don't know what it looks like, but I know that it can happen.
Yeah, having that mindset of putting yourself in his shoes, because you have lived a lot of different situations at a lot of young ages, right? Like, you've worn some serious situations. So when he messes up slightly in hopefully a small avenue, being able to be like, well, wait a second, what would I have done if I was in that situation? Or what would my dad have done if I came to him with that situation? And being able to stay even keel in the situation, well, will just help everything. It'll help your relationship with him. It'll help him in the future.
Yeah, like my dad now, he's 100% different human. Like, I'm there all the time. He calls me every morning at coffee. Like, he's just, as time, and I feel like he has recognized, like, his mistakes and his shortcomings, and now he gets to be, like, I see him interact with my son, and it's like, did you do that with me? Like, maybe you did, but that's not the guy that I remember fucking growing up. Like, you're, like, super nice and friendly and keying with my son, and I'm like, I think I needed some of that from you, Dad.
Yeah. That's true, though. Like, a lot of boys, a lot of men will witness that. I saw that with my brother's children and the way my father acted with them. And it completely, like, you're just like, Grandpa, like, who are you? You say Zadie, like, that like, but he admitted it. Like he admitted it. Like, I am this way with the grandchildren because I was this way with you guys. And because of conversations in our later years with him, I'm assuming individually, my brothers also had conversations with him. And when you become that adult of the parent and you're able to communicate on a different level with them, they then see where they did good and where they could have done better, you know, and then seeing him admit that, and then being the grandfather that he was to all of his grandchildren. I mean, it literally was night and day. It's like, that was not the man I spent 19 years of my life living under the same roof of. And it is quite amazing. You feel really wonderful knowing that that man is still part of your life and is going to be a huge part of your son's life.
Absolutely.
All that I've experienced and all that I've seen, I'm realizing that I'm getting to a point in my life right now where I definitely want to start a family, and I want to do everything I possibly can to do that properly. And I'm very excited for the possibility of being a dad. And it seems that every man that I know that has children is happier. Now, I'm not saying they had a kid to be happy. I'm just saying that addition of a child to their already going well life has just elevated.
I get it. It's something different to live for.
Yeah.
It's no longer this selfish, like me. Like, you have a whole human here. It's, you know, like, you got to play chess. I like to think about 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, like, what impact I'm going to have.
What about the fear aspect?
I mean, there's definitely some irrational fears there. Like today I had to today I met with my lawyer and had to rewrite my entire trust because I didn't have it. All my stuff was going to my nieces and my nephews. And I had to put my son there, and I had to, well, what about this? I'm like, well, what if he's a drug addict? Who's going to do this? Or what if, like, no, like, my son is going to be, I am going to do my best. Obviously, I don't have control, but I made decisions today based upon him being a great fucking human. I just don't want to live a fear-based life. I choose to be more optimistic, and that's just. I'm
a very optimistic person. I'm a very much the glass is half full. I definitely live a life of gratitude and positive thinking. And every day that I'm doing all my writings, I'm always like writing down, be kind to people, help others, create good energy, all that sort of stuff. I know that I'm a great deal of similarity to my father. Now, not knowing what my father went through as a parent, because I was a child, how would I know? And I never had that conversation with him. I know the levels of anxiety that I've dealt with in my life, and I know which things trigger my anxiety. Having this other human to care for seems wonderful, but then I realized that my father's way of parenting, in my mind as a child, was he's being a dick, he doesn't let me do this, blah, blah, blah. But it was really, he was just being overprotective because he cared so much about our safety that he didn't want anything bad to happen to us. But I don't know that as a child, right? I just look at it as like, he's not letting me having any fun. Mm-hmm. So then I think, okay, well, I know my dad probably dealt with levels of anxiety. He had a wife, he had 3 kids, he had a house, he had car payments, he had a law firm. Like, that's a lot of fucking shit. Mm-hmm. And I'm only realizing this now because the little amount of stuff that I have on my plate sometimes is overwhelming, and I have to talk myself down and make myself realize that it's okay. Like, today is a win. You survived it, you know? You're home with your friends, your dog, like, you're breathing. Like, it's a fucking win, dude. But there's a lot of shit that comes at us, and to think or to have the thought of, how am I going to deal with now having the responsibility of every single action that I take is going to reflect on this child.
You just do it. I don't know. I'm still new in it, so can't really speak too much of it, but it's a journey.
It's a journey.
It's a journey.
Best foot forward.
I'm all for the journey.
Yeah. Well, I love the fact that you're saying that, like, every action that you're doing right now is thinking of him doing his best. and all of the things that you want to do to help mold him into the person he's going to become is at the forefront of your brain, and you want to create a healthy house for him and open up the conversation so that he feels comfortable, so that he can grow up in a welcoming arena, that he can be himself and he can come to you with anything that he might, have to deal with, which we know he's going to have to deal with a lot of shit because life is full of it.
A lot of it.
Right? Isn't it crazy?
It is, bro.
When I get back from my next trip, you'll come over again. We'll have another session.
Let's do it.
Awesome.
All right.
To everyone out there in the Life Choices land, thank you very much for coming out each and every week, and we'll see you next Tuesday at 2 p.m. here on the Life Choices podcast. Much love, everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen.
You are now about
The Journey Life Choices podcast.